In part one of our LS Swap for Free build series, I bought this 2009 Escalade and broke it down for parts while keeping the drivetrain. The goal is to swap all of that into my 86 Cutlass 442, sell all of the parts, and ending up with a free LS swap. Part 2 deals with wiring. In this video, we'll talk about a high quality harness, a low buck harness, and making your own harness out of the donor vehicle. Like and subscribe for more, and check out my website for more parts. If you don't love wiring as much as I do, you may be wondering if a replacement harness is right for you. Short answer is, it could be. I partnered with Hotwire Auto to show you what a high quality swap solution looks like. Easily some of the best products on the market. Hotwire is celebrating 25 years in the industry soon, and their products are powering a lot of your favorite builds. Just take a look.
The best way to do that is with a Hotwire Auto harness and computer package. I have one of their harnesses probably in 4 or 5 of my rigs, and I absolutely love them.
And this is the original wiring harness that was in the vehicle that we took off, and we send it over to the guys at hotwireauto.com.
You'll see this solution in the Warlock build, so subscribe to see that video coming soon. Hellcat ECM, 8 HP standalone, drive-by-wire throttle, and look at this beautiful harness. Everything is labeled, streamlined, and properly insulated. I add constant, ground, ignition, and start, and it's ready to go. We get outputs for reverse lights, speedo, and a fan. Just take a look at these factory connectors. Feels much more robust than these cheap kits. Even the routing is purposeful. This type of bend prevents damage because now the harness is following the corners of the drivetrain. Working with the team is easy. They build to fit whatever you're wrenching on. Definitely a great group to have in your corner. Check out their site or give them a call to learn more. Cheaping out on a harness can cost you. The reviews that you're seeing here do not inspire confidence. Plus, if I have to test and fix failure points on a new part, I'd be pissed. Remember, your time costs money. And with this many failure points, this isn't where you want to spend either. Let me show you what making your own looks like. I enjoy wiring. It is pretty much my favorite part of this. So I'm going to walk through it step by step with you. Make sure you understand it, make sure you're comfortable with it. And as always, if you have any questions, just check out my website, shoot a note, and let me know how I can help. Here's everything you need to start wire prepping. Isopropyl alcohol, Windex or another degreaser, zip ties, blades, gloves, pin removal tools, cutters, a pick tool, and paper towels. Now, here's the harness we're working from. This is from the fuse box all the way to the engine sensors. I'll cover the throttle pedal piece a bit later because I'm using a drive-by-wire throttle. As you can see, this is a mess and not good enough for transplanting into the Cutlass. Remember, these are factory strong, but close to 20 years old, so there may be some butchery that we'll have to fix. The only way we'll know is once we dive in. I started by using the blade to de-lume all of the wiring. My goal is to expose all the wires and see what condition the harness is truly in. I'll use this opportunity to spruce it up with a combination of split loom and wire sleeves that match the gold block. I needed to use everything I had to remove the leftover residue. Here's the only damage I found. This is a spliced harness that wasn't visible before the breakdown. A couple of these splices still had copper exposed. Here's some of the damage where the outside jacket was ripped away, exposing copper. The truck ran, but remember, we removed this harness and we're now putting it in another vehicle. These can rub together and cause codes and drivability issues you won't be able to solve easily. So take your time, look over this stuff. It's the easiest time to fix it. I'll remove these connections, properly splice them back together, and heat shrink them. Here's all the remnants after stripping down the harness, and here's what we're left with. I know it looks a little crazy right now, but there's a method to this madness. Just note all of the zip ties that you're seeing. These are breaks in the routing where the wires will join or leave the main artery. I grabbed 2 sizes of split loom and 3 sizes of gold and black straight loom and started replacing all of the old, dirty, and brittle loom. Get split loom that covers over itself instead of that plastic factory replacement stuff. You'll have greater flexibility in the harness bundle size, and then you can use the appropriate Tessa or 3M super tape to keep everything nice and neat. Here's a tip. The zip ties are being used to section the wire and retain the branches as I remove the loom. That way every plug will be exactly where it needs to be. Just think of it like arteries. You want to mark where everything goes. I went the extra mile and depinned connectors to slip that color matching loom throughout the harness. Not necessary, but I told you, I love this stuff. A depin tool is the correct thing to use here, but I have better success with a sharp pick tool for this connector. Now, once the connector is off, I slip the wire through the loom, cut it to size, heat up the loom to seal the cut, and use tape or shrink wrap to secure the end. Rinse and repeat for the whole harness, and I added a link to my favorite depinning video in the description below if you're interested. At the end, it should end up looking something like this. Now, I didn't remove any wires from my harness. While some may take the opportunity to get rid of emission stuff, I just kept it. It's not hurting it. And in some states, you may actually need it. I bought a set of eBay fans to see how well they perform. And unfortunately, these connectors are not weatherproof. I have a Deutsch connector kit that I use for stuff like this. Here's the other side of the connection I made. The fuse box came from Amazon, and I plan to have it on the driver's side behind a headlight, since the ECM harness kind of falls in that same area. Now, this is a great starting point for a compact fuse block. Think of the relay leads as digital light switches. The smaller wire is the trigger that's used to flip the switch and send power to the larger wire. Once I get this over to the car, I'll show you how I choose to bundle and run my circuits. But I try to prepare as much as possible inside the house, so I'm not hunched over the car for hours. I ended up making the fuse block to battery positive cable and a frame to engine ground. All right, so our engine is sitting in place finally. We've gotten all of our wiring loosely routed, and we need to start to make the connection between the engine, transmission, and the rest of the car. So you have 4 major plugs coming out of your harness here. These 2 go to your computer. So we'll disregard them for now. This is your most serious plug. This is X2 on the bottom side of your fuse block underneath your hood. I'll place a wiring diagram on the screen now. It has all of the wires, the sizes, what it does, all of that. This wire, for instance, this is a blue with a white tracer. So you'll see blue, white, just listed there. And this is really, really easy, I promise you guys. And if you have any problems, just reach out to me. Some questions are free, some require consultation. It all depends on what you're battling, but I'm happy to help either way. All of the pink wires, pink with a white tracer, solid pink, pink with a black tracer, doesn't matter. They will all be controlled by ignition voltage. If your car is off, it shouldn't get power. If your ignition is on and you have dash lights on, that's when they should get 12 plus volts. So keep that in mind. You have a black wire right here. Of course, that's going to go to ground. You have a purple wire here. That is the starter energizer. So when you turn the key all the way to crank it up, that's the only time that one should get voltage. You have some other wires here that we'll dive into a little bit deeper. They're for drivability things. For instance, your transmission needs to know when the brake is applied so it can, unlock the clutch torque converter. It's not going to know that unless you supply the required voltage here when needed. There are other wires here, situation type wires like that. We'll dive into that one in the next episode when we're trying to get it on the road. This one has 9 wires going to it, and 6 of the 9 control your accelerator pedal. I'm keeping my drive-by wires set up, so I'm going to use this one along with my pedal. And if you got the wiring harness that was underneath the dash of the Escalade, great. You may need to lengthen it a little bit, but it'll give you everything you need from underneath the dash all the way over here. You just match up the colors, splice them together, so on and so forth. I'm gonna end up using a Deutsch connector on that one. We'll do that in the next episode as well. And just get a waterproof seal, and I can disconnect and reconnect it whenever needed. So 6 of those wires will account for here. And if there are any other wire connections that we need to make to get it driving, I'll show you that soon as well. All right, so now I got tape. I'm gonna use that to label my wires. Got a pen, got my side cutters, and I got my tablet here that I'm rolling through the entire X2 connection. So right here, every row has a corresponding letter. Every column has a corresponding number. We're starting off here with this solid dark green wire. That's A1. So at the end will be A5, and then B, C, D, so on and so forth all the way down. So dark green goes to my low speed cooling fan. Not gonna need that right now. But I will label that so I know. This one looks like C3, dark green and white. That one is the AC compressor clutch, relay control. And what is that? C5 is yellow with a black tracer, starter enable relay control. Now, we're basically hot wiring our starter, so we won't need to deal with the relay control. We're not dealing with, VATs or pass lock or anything disabling the starter. We're hooking up our starter right to it here, so we're good to go. Solid dark green wire. It's a little bit thicker than the rest of them. That's the way you can tell. That one will be for our compressor clutch supply voltage. So one of the two wires that are basically locking the clutch together when the AC comes on, that's this bad boy. So we'll stop right there. I'm gonna undo some of the wiring, connection that I did down here so I can get some more lead on this wire and label everything appropriately. Now you may be looking at that and thinking, man, maybe I should go with that swap harness after all. Slow down, I'll show you what to do. Majority of LS swap videos that you've probably seen will tell you, hey, all of these pink wires, join them together in one connection. That's a bad idea for two reasons. First off, where are you going to get one relay to control all of those functions? It's going to take more than 40 amps to run all of those. It's still having the headspace that you need to have to be able to deal with high current draw. The current draw that you're going to run on all of that, fuel pump, ignition, spark, injectors, and that's just the base of it. There's so much more in those wires as well. One relay is not good enough to run all of that. You don't want that. You still need headroom to account for fluctuations in voltage draw, because at some times you're going to want more power to come out of those circuits. Like when you're under max acceleration, you're going to need more spark, you're going to need more fuel. So it doesn't make sense to run all of that off of one relay. That's why I'm going to run it off of multiple relays. Believe me, if GM could have done it, they would have done it too. Why invest so much more money in an entire fuse block when you only needed one relay to run all of your ignitions? Not the best way. Number two, let's say you start popping fuses or you start popping that ignition fuse. How are you going to pinpoint what the problem is? You're going to have to disconnect each injector, each coil to try to isolate what is giving you the problem, why you're popping fuses. But by isolating the majority of these circuits into the way that the computer deemed it, then you can start to really troubleshoot if you run into any issues in the future. That's going to make your swap serviceable by anybody else who comes over and wants to work on your car. We would like to think that LS swaps are, once you're done, you're not gonna have to worry about anything else again. But remember, these are truck engines. They're in the junkyards for a reason. There are problems that people can't figure out. And when it comes time to, do the swap and incorporate it in a car that it never came in, you're going to be paying hundreds of dollars an hour for somebody to diagnose what the issue is. So might as well make it simple. And if you see all of these LS swaps gone wrong videos, you're seeing that people are just going to start over with a brand new harness because they don't have the time, energy, or patience to try to pinpoint what the electrical gremlin is. Short of bringing over the entire fuse block from the truck donor, which is the easiest and most cost-effective way, this is another way that you should strongly consider if you're comfortable with electronics. So I bought this for another project a long time ago, and ideally you could use something like this to run circuitry throughout the car. But this is not a good fit for this because one, it's not waterproof as you can see, and there's no relays to draw off of it. We're going to need to take care of our high speed and low speed cooling fan, all of our ignition circuitry, our starter, AC compressor clutch. Those are some of the things that we need relays for anyway. So we're going to be recreating the wheel that existed with that stock fuse block, but in a smaller footprint, and still have room to expand later on and not have to scratch our heads and figure out, how did the factory think or engineer this fuse block to be, because we have our own and we can start from scratch. Okay, so here's what we got going on. I've got my fuse block here. I've got my maxi fuse that'll run to the battery on that side, and I've gotten all of the engine wiring right here. Now I've gotten the ignition separated in 3 circuits. I've written down the circuit numbers so I'll be able to track what fuse and what relay goes to each of those circuits for diagnostic purposes if ever one of these fuses pop. I'm taking the bunch of those circuits and I'm braiding them together with the output of the relay. So the way that this box works is it takes all of our inputs here, it goes to the fuse, then it goes to the first leg of the relay, and then it'll go to the outward side of the relay when it's triggered. Now these are my trigger wires down here. We'll use some signal in the car that gives us key on for setting this up, but we just need to make sure that that key on and the ignition fuse will generate 12 volts while you're cranking as well. Otherwise, we won't get any spark or we won't get any fuel. We'll get all these wires cleaned up. We'll skin them back far enough to braid them in with the relay wire, and then we'll clean up the connections afterwards. Now, before putting on shrink wrap, some folks may opt to solder the connection and do all of that. This is a high vibration area. It's a high vibration setting. So I don't really believe in soldering components or soldering wires when these aren't fixed. When I get to battery cables, then I would solder those because the actual terminals aren't going to move that much. We basically hammer them in, we'll punch this center, and we'll heat up the solder and get it tight there. But something as flexible as wiring, that's just not where I think we should spend time soldering. So we will lock these 3 in with the heat gun or with my torch, and then we can move on to other connections. I wanted to get the 10 relays set so that we can expand on any additional circuits that we may want to add later on. These G-body cars are notorious for not having enough space in its fuse block. So down there is like really, really crammed and crowded, and the wiring is just not robust. So anytime we can add some more circuitry and do it in a safe way, we're really going to maximize it. And the great part about this is you're not going to have a separate box for just the engine, and then there's going to be another box that you're going to have to add in additional creature comforts. Like let's say you're running heated seats from an SS Camaro and you want to integrate that in there, you're not going to use the wiring in there, right? So if you want to add star lights to the inside of your car, you want to add fog lights to the outside of this, the possibilities for wiring are endless. So just have extra space, have extra circuitry, and you'll be great to go. And since we're running such a big fuse here, we really just scratched the surface with all of this. And everything that I'm taking note of here, I'm also taking a note on my tablet. So once this is all done, I'll print it out. I could put it on the inside of this cover. I could make a PDF and leave it with the vehicle when it goes up for sale. And that way, whoever touches this vehicle next doesn't feel like they need to go out and get a brand new harness setup because they don't know where you left off. You have everything that you did basically in a PDF, and it's really, really easy because you're going to go to the parts store and say you have an 08 Escalade when it comes to engine and transmission. When it comes to wiring, it's basically the same thing. And when you need to troubleshoot and trace wiring, you have separate fuses and separate relays for ignition components drawn out by circuit. So one other thing that we should run is our fuel pump. So I'll wire that in with some of the extra wiring that we have here, and we'll be able to run a suitable gauge wire back to your fuel pump so that when we get the 340 liter per hour pump in there, we'll be good to go. We know for the purposes of this, we're not going to touch our compressor clutch wiring. This needs to go to ground, that's N5. These need to go to brake wiring, which goes to this bulkhead connector. F1 is our starter output, so this goes straight to the starter. P4 is what we're looking for. It's dark green and white, and that will go to our fuel pump control. So these two relays are 5-pin relays that have additional functionality for normally closed and normally open circuits. You can tell that by the two wires and the lettering on them right here. I can go into a spiel on why that's good, but we don't need it right now, so I'll leave it to somebody in the comments to explain the benefits of having 5-pin relays here. They're really all 5-pin relays, but only 4 terminals on the rest of these are wired such. So far we have fan 1, fan 2, ignition 1, ignition 2, ignition 3, fuel pump. And then these two are blank. And then we ran our 2 red and white wires to this circuit right here that have those terminals. So I'll just look for a fuse that I can fit in there and we'll be golden. Now, looking at the gauge of wire, there's not a lot of amperage that's running through these. So feel free to go with a 5 or a 10 amp. That's likely what the factory is using. 10 amp feels about right to me. But if you want to know for certain, take a look at these wires in your wiring diagram, identify the circuit that they came off of, and see what fuse in the original fuse block used them. One final point of importance about this fuse block that you all need to know is it's set up right now to look for positive triggers. If you hook it up in the way that the directions set forth, you will use this black wire and hook it up to ground. Here's why you don't want to do that. If you hook this one up to ground, the other side of the relay will need power to energize. You'll need positive voltage on that side. The problem with that is all of the triggers that the ECM puts out are negative. So if you have negative on one side of the relay and then negative on the other side, that's not going to energize the coil. It's not going to throw the relay on or off. So here's the cheat code. You hook this one up to positive voltage. That's how your fuse block for your typical car is wired on these. That's how the fuse block on the Escalade is wired, so that's the way you want to mimic it. By running power to this wire, you have positive on pin 86. You'll look for negative on pin 85, which are all of these others. So that way, when your computer sends a negative trigger for your AC, for your ignition, for your fuel pump, all of those will correctly energize the relay and throw voltage out through these thicker gauge wires when the time comes. So if you don't understand it, leave a note in the comments. I'll try to explain it. But that's one gotcha that if you're not getting a successful start, that's where you need to look first. All right, so all of this is a part of the C100 connector that comes underneath the brake booster. We're gonna grab this entire harness, take it inside. We're not gonna clean it up and do it to the level that we did the engine harness because I got something in store, maybe in a later episode. But I just want to pull out some of the needed wires that we have to connect to our fuse block and to the engine in order to get it to run. We got our C100 connector plugged in, and then you're left with these bunch of wires here. The large red wires, you'd be left with 2 or 3 of them. These 2 are gonna go to my fuse block on the fused side. The purple one will end up going to the starter's purple wire. The pink one will supply the ignition relay for those 3 ignition circuits. I'm gonna hold on to this white wire as this one is the tack. And then we have some extra wires over here that went to the coolant switch, the alternator, so on and so forth. So we won't need those for right now. So we'll make those connections and should be good to go. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. At this point in the video, you can turn the key and the engine will fire up, but we still have to worry about the transmission, the exhaust, and the fuel system. So more on that and more in part 3. I listened to all of your comments, so I definitely wanted to get part 2 of the LS swap build out before I start on the Warlock. SEMA is a month away, so every day counts on that. Thanks for watching. Talk to you in the next one.